Hello everyone, thank you for joining another edition of Kyte Talks. Today we talk about another very interesting subject. We talk about artificial intelligence. It has become a buzzword. It has almost become cool to mention AI in every other sentence when one talks about products or services. For sure it is a very vast subject, and today I'd like to approach it from a very specific angle. My name is Trevor Asha, and I'm the director at Kyte Global. I have with me today two very distinguished guests, and I'll proceed to introduce them. Dr. Vanessa Camilleri, who is a senior lecturer at the University of Malta within the Department of AI, and Mr. Gavril Flores, who is the Chief Strategy, Policy and Governance at the MDIA, the Malta Digital Innovation Authority. So we actually have the regulator with us today. Guys, thank you very much for joining me today. Let's get right into it. We start with a very basic question. We're talking about AI today, but what exactly are we talking about? What are we referring to? What applications, what different categories of applications are there? Any technologies what exactly are we talking about when we say AI?
Okay, so first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. So artificial intelligence was not born yesterday, okay? So it wasn't even born with the famous or infamous ChatGPT, because everybody just thinks that artificial is artificial intelligence. In fact, the term artificial intelligence actually goes back to the summer of 1956. That's as long. But then, of course, the technology itself was not ripe. So the concept was there, but how we were getting to it was still not ripe. So fast forward a number of decades, and in the 1990s, we start making some progress towards this artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence is an umbrella term, okay? Within it, you find a number of areas, a number of techniques, a number of technologies. But fundamentally, the concept is this. There is a problem, and you're using a machine to be able to solve the problem in a way that a human would. So using problem-solving abilities and capabilities. But being a machine, such capabilities are augmented. So what we're using artificial intelligence for is to find the problem and then use the machine, use techniques, use technologies, use methods to be able to provide solutions for that. And this is why artificial intelligence finds its scope in so many different fields and areas. So you've got artificial intelligence in fintech, you have artificial intelligence in healthcare, you have artificial intelligence in education, in manufacturing, in aerospace and technology, everywhere. Now we see, but maybe we can talk about it later, that there's people might feel a bit threatened in terms of their jobs, because they think that artificial intelligence can take over jobs. In reality, artificial intelligence is there to augment the capabilities of humans to do their job better. This is if used in the correct way.
Sure. And you touched on a subject of what people think, but Gavril, from a public perception point of view, and again, you're representing the regulator, so a lot of the policies you're putting in place is with that in mind as well. What's the public perception out there? And as we'll talk later in this discussion, we'll bring in the concept of regulation. Is there such a thing as awareness of regulation?
Thank you for the invitation. First of all, pleasure to be here. Everyone talks about AI. And last year, we carried out research with 500 participants across Maltese demographic. And we asked, what is AI? Do you know what is AI? Do you use AI? Do you trust AI? And we had some very interesting results. And very interestingly, that around over 60% of the people think that they are familiar with the concept of AI. Some of them couldn't define them, and I don't blame them, because we spent years working with legislators to try to define AI, and only recently we have an agreed definition at OECD. So basically there's this concept of being familiar. Yet our question is, do we trust AI? And as MDIA, our first commitment is to have an ecosystem which supports public, which supports company, and which drives trust in digital innovation. And what was interesting in this research that only 1 in 4 people trust artificial intelligence. Yet, over 60% believe that AI is beneficial for society. So we have this situation where people trust or not trust AI, yet you see it as something beneficial.
Yeah, it's conflicting, right?
Yes, and that's where the vacuum which we saw as regulators, the need to explain people what is AI, first of all, because there's a lot of misconceptions. So in reality, if you're watching a movie, you don't want to wait for 20 minutes to find a good movie, but you want a movie in front of you which really understands, and what is that? That is AI. If you're driving and you want to go in a specific direction, you want your map to show you the quickest way and avoiding traffic, and that is AI. And if someone is undergoing diagnosis and you have some possibility of influence by a machine which can support earlier diagnosis and be of support to doctors and health professionals, that can also be AI. So how can we make this framework which supports people to trust digital innovation? And trust is built, and to trust, it's not something which people should give for granted. So that's why there is an importance of having standards in place, of having regulation in place, which really supports innovation and is there for the benefit of people.
I was going to ask, in fact, can innovation and regulation exist at the same time?
Definitely. We believe in the concept of safe innovation. First of all, we need to understand that our regulatory framework should be there in a way that does not stifle innovation. We go a step further as MDIA. We do not want just a regulatory framework which doesn't stifle innovation, but a regulatory framework which really empowers people to be innovative. So at MDIA, we have this culture of being the regulators, yet we also issue schemes to support people being innovative. And one very interesting aspect of the new AI Act is that research is out of scope. So what do we mean? We mean that we need to give the necessary space to researchers to come up with solutions, come up with AI systems in a way which does not hinder them. Yet, if you're going to place it on the market, and I'm giving you an example, if you have a kid and there's an AI system which helps if that kid should go to that school or should not go to that school. If you're receiving a pension and there is a system which determines if you should receive that pension or not. Can you trust blindly the AI systems? We believe that you should have the necessary safeguards in place. And that is what the regulatory framework is about. So we have this idea of having sectors which are high risk, or areas which are high risk, and there the level of regulatory input is definitely more focused and more. And yet we have the majority of systems which carry out narrow procedural tasks, which will have to basically follow a voluntary code of conduct, or can follow a voluntary code of conduct. So yes, we believe that definitely innovation and regulation can coexist. And if you look at Malta's history, at Malta's economy, I believe that the main economic aspects, the main economic niches which we have in Malta, were also driven by regulation. So, because regulation helps people in trusting, promotes Malta as a jurisdiction of choice, and shows an element or the importance of consumer protection. So basically, another aspect which I can mention is the MDIA sandbox. And it's a very practical way how we at MDIA, we were the first country in the EU to develop an AI sandbox focused funded by a regulator. Why? Because we believe that what we mean by sandbox, basically you have an applicant who's developing a system, we have an independent expert who is appointed, and we have this ongoing communication to really try to find what are the critical milestones for the systems and how can we ensure that they are developed in line with international standards. So it's voluntary, and we have a number of applicants from different sectors, and it's a practical example how innovation and regulation can coexist.
Yeah. Very good. I didn't want to stop you there, but since you went into the subject of regulation and what Malta is doing as a regulator, Malta is seen by many as already a pioneer when it comes to AI, and with the new EU AI Act coming up. What would you consider to be the challenges in its implementation, or the benefits, or the opportunities, let's say?
So I believe that Malta started preparing for the EU AI Act before the actual proposal was drafted by the EU Commission, and we are in this situation where we are at an advanced stage in our planning for a legal act, which will you need to have everything in place for industry in 2 years' time, basically. And I believe that our level of preparedness has been multifaceted, both in terms of ensuring the necessary capacity building, but also in creating the level of awareness necessary, which is still ongoing, for industry to flourish, and also to have this consumer protection. So there's a lot of opportunities and there's also a lot of challenges, but we believe that we can transform these challenges into opportunities. And this can be done by having industry on board, by engaging in early dialogue with researchers, because while research is out of scope of the AI Act, we hope that a lot of systems, AI systems developed by researchers, will eventually be placed on the market. So can we explain to researchers at an early stage what are the requirements so they keep them in mind? At the end of the day, I think the requirements are there for the benefit of all. And working together, as I said, both with industry, with professionals, with technical experts, will ensure that we as Malta continue to be prepared, and we are in a better position to be a destination of choice for AI companies who wish to place on the market AI solutions.
And we're, as a country, we're building our framework for licensing as well in this regard?
So basically the requirements from the EU AI Act, there are a number of systems, which is limited, which legislators believe that they are not in line with the European values associated with human rights, with democracy and with rule of law. And we're looking at systems such as a blank card for real-time biometric, for example, or for carte blanche, or for example, social scoring, whereby you're given a number based on your behavior in a way which does not respect your rights. So those systems will be prohibited. The next set of systems, so we're looking at a risk-based approach, are systems which are high risk. And when we look at high risk systems, they will not require a license from a regulator, but they need to go through conformity assessment. And what is conformity assessment? There will be standards in place, because most of the standards are developing as we speak, and you'll need to ensure that you follow those standards. And you will have these conformity assessment bodies, which are accredited, which are independent, which are impartial, which will go through a very thorough process to ensure that they fulfill the requirements. And if you have this system, you have to go through this system of conformity assessment, not to regulators, but to conformity assessment bodies. And that is the process at European level. As in the same across all European member states. There is also the sandbox. As I said, Malta was the first to create an AI sandbox, but we also have now provisions in the legislation that each country, each member state should have a sandbox or as partner with another member states to have a joint one. So there's a number of advantages to joining the sandbox, and especially it ensures the necessary level of preparedness that as a company, as an AI system, is in line with the legislation.
And as we expect out of other industries as well,
yes.
Other high-risk ones.
It's very similar what happens in product safety and general product safety. So basically, here we are not reinventing the wheel, regulators don't invent the wheel, but if you have a tablet and it's gone through a whole process to ensure it's compliant, should the system, and that is the question at the end of the day, should a system which will decide if your child will get to school, or to a particular school or not, have human oversight, undergo to an independent third-party process for checks, and you as a consumer or as general public, you have the right to redress. So these are the rights that we are talking about, and I believe these are all beneficial, and it's not definitely a perfect system. There is no such thing as a perfect system, but it's definitely in the right direction if we want to promote human rights, democracy, and rule of law.
You touched on a subject, Vanessa, I'll go to you. Maybe a little bit of a controversial question. Mm-hmm. You mentioned assessments, audits. Obviously, I'm quite familiar with the IT audit space myself, but how do you feel in this case of not exactly the same assessments as Gavril is mentioning, but how would you feel about audits, IT audits, assessments that are done with the use of AI or completely done through the use of AI technology?
That is...
Which is not to say the same assessments that Gavril was mentioning, but this technology could potentially be used in such applications as well.
I mean, at the end of the day, the scope of artificial intelligence is to be as autonomous as possible, okay? Now, the thing is this, in a parallel study, because here we're talking about this idea of humans and AI, and everything is tied or centered around the human, right? And this is what we need to keep in mind. So in a similar and parallel study that we conducted, and Gavril knows about it, we also try to understand more about the emotions that people feel when it comes to AI. And this anxiety, this kind of fear, comes out more because they have no clue how AI is taking decisions and the decisions it takes. So one of the emerging trends within AI research is that of explainable AI. The idea of having explainable AI is that the human who's at the other end, who may have agency over the decisions that an IT system, such as an auditing system, is taking, can have full explainability of how the algorithms were actually emerged with the result that they have emerged and why. And this explainable AI has various facets to it, and there's various stages. One idea is that within this explainable AI framework, you have the possibility to know if the AI is using fair judgment, if the AI has problems or challenges that relate to bias. We know that an AI is only as good as its data. if the data is flawed, if the data is biased, and we know that data is biased because it's produced by humans, and humans are biased. Now, what happens is that the algorithm has the potential to augment such bias. So by having explainable AI, by understanding how the algorithm is reaching its decisions, whether this is in auditing, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in education, whether it's in banking and finance, we know that AI is not 100% error-proof. Now, by having such a possibility of identifying where these errors are occurring, how they're occurring, then, of course, the level of trust will increase. And it's not just the level of trust, but the general public perception and emotion relating to the use of AI will be more positive. And there will also be this kind of better collaboration between the human and the AI, and thus even allowing for the human to have and retain more agency over the whole autonomous process of taking decisions by the AI.
You mentioned when an error takes place, right? Who do we blame in that case? No, the concept of accountability is completely...
That is a very contentious issue. It's a grey area, even at an EU level, AI Act level.
And it's possible that nobody has done anything wrong, really. It's just that...
There could be a number of possibilities, and there could be a number of reasons why such errors occur. It could be related to the algorithm. It could be related, if we're talking about machine learning, it could be related to the data. It could be related to the implementation procedures. It could be... Now, there are different ways and procedures to try and mitigate these error threats. And, of course, there's a whole system and hierarchy of people that can help towards reducing these errors. But yeah, errors have been known to occur. There was a very famous software released by a huge software company, and it concerned face recognition. It's in the public domain, really. And way back in 2018, when even law enforcers were using it, it was discovered that it had a major flaw when it comes to the identification of faces that were of darker color, darker skin. And the error rate was quite high. So what to do? What happened? There were lawsuits, against this company, especially for people who were treated unfairly and unjustly because of this particular AI application and program. But in the long run, it may be difficult to identify the accountable company person. So I think that there are processes and procedures that are, even as we speak, as Gavril was saying, they're being set up, task forces, trying to how to understand how to go about protecting the rights of the individuals. What's for sure is that many nations, including the EU and all the countries, I think that what they're trying to aim for is to try and, as much as possible, protect the individual against harm. I think that's the overall arching theme within this whole ethical topic debate that we're talking when it comes to AI. So protecting the rights of the individual.
Yeah. There is, building on that, parallel to the EU Act, there is also the EU AI Liability Directive, which really tries to make it simpler in terms of liability requirements, etc. So it's of course it's a tough topic, and case law with time will further highlight what the gaps are. But definitely it is a priority area to further delineate the responsibilities, and that will facilitate, of course, because if you had requirements to build a quality system and ensure that the training of the system undergoes a process to remove discrimination, not eliminate, totally eliminate, because that's mathematically impossible to eliminate bias, but to reduce and mitigate against that. Of course, there can be liability concerns if you haven't gone through that process. So at the end of the day, the intention of and the aim of such legislative proposals is to ensure more clarity. And that at the end of the day will facilitate better competition, because you'll not be competing an AI system which is at a different price range but wouldn't have gone through the necessary checks. So it's about finding the right balance in sustaining innovation, because we want the EU not to be just a follower in terms of AI, but to have leadership in AI. And balancing that, of course, with safety and product safety and AI systems safety.
Just to add to this as well, because you triggered something. When OpenAI, first brought up ChatGPT and all the GPT models, whatever, they didn't really understand the full impact it was going to have on people. And when I say impact, it's not just in terms of jobs for the creative industry, but also mental and emotional impact. There were cases in some countries where this particular software actually led to people committing harm to themselves. And this is something that companies such as OpenAI did not really foresee. And I think what's very important about this idea of the sandbox and what MDIA are trying to do is to get companies who are directly involved and researchers who are directly involved in creating AI-driven and AI-based systems to think about. So the design process of it is very, very important, to think about the potential harms, injustices, potential problems that it may cause to people. And sometimes we, even as developers, we don't see this. We just design, because we say, oh, this is going to solve a problem, as I said in the beginning, and it's going to solve a problem very efficiently. Yes, but, who is it going to affect? If it's positive for who? Is it going to be negative for a minority group? Is it going to create some sort of injustice? And what sort of injustice, and to who? And are we going to allow it? And who are we to allow this? So these are loads and loads of questions. So designing an AI system is not simply just choosing an algorithm or a model and just implementing it there and say, okay, the bank is using this particular model to assess whether you are eligible for a home loan or not. It's not that. It's about the further implications that it can have on the human.
Yeah. Gavril, within Malta as a jurisdiction, which sectors would you think are mostly going to be impacted by, let's say, the EU AI Act, public services, or as a country in general?
Super. So the EU AI Act is not a sector-specific piece of legislation. So it goes into multiple sectors, but there's no exclusion that in the future there will be further sector-specific legislation. I think one has to look at it in terms of those products, AI systems, which are defined as high risk. We can say that there are the harmonized products in traditional legislation, such as toys, for example. Those are considered as a harmonized product. So the requirements across the EU are the same. And then there is a list of AI systems which carry certain functions which are considered as high risk. And those who are operating in those sectors, of course, will have more requirements. I'll give you some examples. One example is a system associated with employment. So, for example, if you look into salaries data in multiple member states, women are paid less than men for a particular job. So if I am looking for a job and I am a female, the system may recommend me jobs which are lesser paid because the data wasn't trained or there's no data governance arrangements in place. So that is a sector. Another sector is education. Again, I gave her this example, whether a child will attend a specific school or not, but it's also about the evaluation of the learning outcomes. Another area is insurance and financial services, and there we have two specific examples which are determined as high risk. For example, the risk assessment, whether you are given and at what price a health insurance, or assessment of creditworthiness. So we want a regulatory framework which works better, which minimizes human error. So the use of such AI systems are considered as high risk. That means that there will have to go through a more stringent approach prior to these being placed on the market. So these are some examples. The government and Malta has been adopting AI in a number of sectors through a set of pilot projects. And the AI strategy, which was published in 2019, we have multiple sectors such as utilities, education, and we have some very interesting results there. And what's fascinating, that the best results were with students who are more vulnerable. So that's something which is very important for us at MDIA, because we believe in a just transition. And healthcare, for example, we have another project running in forecasts of medicines using AI and pharmaceutical products required in the future using artificial intelligence. So these are just some examples of how AI is being used, and sectors which, my first part of the answer, sectors which are mainly affected by the new AI Act.
So, latching on to what Gavril was saying before, even in terms of financial services, for example, and fintech, at the University of Malta, the Faculty of ICT, we have a number of research projects that actually focus on this idea of fintech and using AI-driven systems. And some things that we're finding through these research projects is that AI can very much assist humans with a good accuracy and in terms of data analysis. Well, first of all, the increased capabilities of different AI systems and different AI technologies make it such that it can make trudging through huge amounts of data much more easy. Also identifying even errors within the data with AI is much more, is a process that will require less time, less resources, less human resources, thus allowing humans to focus more on other things. We've got the predictive capability of AI based on historical data or based from different sources of data, something again that humans, the human eye or the way the human processes information might miss. So what we're talking about is that the AI assists the human in the job, assists the human within the workforce. It is not meant to replace the human. So AI, fintech will not just be AI. There will always be somebody who's at the other end who tries to understand where the problem lies and then uses AI to try and find that particular solution. And this can occur in the financial services sector as well.
Very good. And Gavril, you mentioned before high risk, just for the sake of clarity. When we say high risk, we're not talking about those categories or those applications that are typically considered, let's say, illegal or unsafe, right?
No.
Those are completely
No. In
out of
fact,
scope of this discussion.
They are prohibited, so there are fines if you place on the market, and fines are massive there, systems which are prohibited. And we have a set of systems which are prohibited, a number of systems which have been identified as high risk, and then there's most of the systems which are not high risk. So it's only a voluntary code of conduct and the requirements which are also established by virtue of other legislation, not just the EU.
When we talk about high risk, we're talking about systems that can negatively impact humans.
Exactly.
And
Potentially.
And that this negative impact, has already been established, has already been proven, and that can also be discriminatory against humans. So this is why...
But for which we can have controls to counter it.
Exactly. And then there are systems which are prohibited. If you do a social scoring system, for example, intrinsically, it's how it is that it's not in line, a certain social scoring system, in line with European values and our values also in Malta. So those will be totally prohibited in the coming months. But then there are systems which are good, but it's a question of risk balance. So if you don't do the controls, the risks then will be greater than the benefits. But if you do controls, the benefits will outweigh the risks.
There were a number of cases of banks, for example, in the US, that were using AI-driven systems. Now, these were being used to allow people to take out loans. And the controls were not in place. So what happened was that there was a very unfair system that was biased against certain people, especially during in certain regions where there were droughts. So there was lack of water, and people who were actually asking for these loans were farmers who were trying to rebuild their land post-pandemic. And so there wasn't enough monitoring of the systems to understand that the system was taking an unfair decision. And such systems can be seen as high risk because they're directly affecting the livelihood and the quality of life of a person, of a human. So this is what we mean by high risk systems.
And continue on that. So there's the proactive element that the system has to be inbuilt in a good way, with the necessary controls, with the necessary safeguards, quality management system. But then there is another aspect, because you might do something which you think it's perfect, then for some people it would not work.
Exactly.
So we need a system which provides for redress.
Exactly.
And the EAI Act and what we're doing in Malta is making it easier for people to find that redress, to have empowered regulators who have the power to investigate, to ask for information, to look into the systems, to audit if necessary, and
to fix the problem.
And to fix the problem at the end of the day. But if it can also lead to fines and a number of liabilities. But at the end of the day, what we want is something which is better for people. I think that is the focus.
Vanessa, within the education system, where you do most of your work, how are the institutions, let's say, preparing the students for a workforce that, to a certain extent, is going to be influenced by AI, jobs, resources that are going to be working within AI, or potentially within projects associated with AI?
Well, let me start with the University of Malta, because, of course, that is where I work. At the University of Malta, there have been, we have initiated the steps towards having different faculties try to look at how AI is going to impinge the work or have an impact on the work that the students will be doing. I believe there's scope for more. The thing is this, that once within the workforce, people are going to be faced by businesses, by directors, managers, where they're going to be exposed to the use of AI. They're going to be required. Many companies are upskilling their employees in the use of AI, and that is one way of ensuring some professional development in terms of how people can make the best use of AI tools and systems. Because let's face it, AI is here to stay, and we know that businesses who opt out of any use of AI at all may be at a disadvantage next to others. So what we have and what we're seeing, in various industries, is that there's this huge drive. So employees, people within the workforce, are going to be faced with how am I going to use this AI for the better. As educational institutions, what we need to do, in my opinion, is that we need to expose students to different case studies, to different hands-on practical tasks where they actually see examples of AI, applications, technologies, and start understanding how to best work with them. It's not easy. Academic members of staff need to also be fluent in these to be able to help students, but it's also a matter of creating a more project-based approach. This idea of trying to establish a relationship between academia and industry is very important, and that's another step that can help students understand better how AI is being used.
I got my first taste of AI way back at university, but that was 25 years ago. Yeah. Things have matured quite a lot as far as the curriculum itself, right? But I suppose one of the important topics within this discussion would be ethics, I suppose.
Absolutely. In fact, this is something that we noticed in the last couple of years, in fact, at the Department of Artificial Intelligence. This is something that we are introducing. You see, years ago, even when you were at university, the role of the developer was to develop, right? And the developer was also stereotypically seen as somebody who writes code. And that is true. But with the advent of AI, it's not just a matter of writing a simple program. What you're doing is creating something that's going to affect humans. So these people who will be developers, who will be specialists, who will be AI experts within a company need to understand what can happen, need to empathize with humans at the other end. Who will be affected by, what they help create, what they help produce. So AI ethics is a very important subject. It is something which is also, I'm very passionate about. And I think it's very important. And I think that everyone, even young children, need to actually be exposed to. Because this is something, ethics is all about society. It's all about the society that we live in. And AI and society, are very closely intertwined, whether we want it or not, whether we know about it or not, and whether we're consciously using it or not. Even at the faculty, we run a boot camp in collaboration with the MDIA as well for young people. Between the ages of 12 and 15. And one of the things that we do within this boot camp, which is very fun, we allow students to choose their own projects and work on their own projects, but all the time reflecting on these ethical issues, on these questions, but how does this affect somebody and how will it affect somebody? So these are questions that we really need to instill in people, both from a creator end and both from a consumer end. How is this going to affect me? What are my rights? Do I have a right to know whether I'm chatting to a chatbot or whether I'm chatting to a human when it comes to customer care? Is it my right? It is. It is your right. Many people don't know. So having this conversation with all ages is very important, and that is what education should be about.
Gavril, from Vanessa was just mentioning, from an MDIA point of view, you are collaborating from the, let's say, maybe even higher up from a government point of view. Any initiatives with respect to let's say, the workforce, which is already an issue, right? Resources are what they are, but with AI, I suppose it makes the problem maybe a little bit more complex.
I think education, education, education. So education is the key. And we are not just looking at building the next generation of experts in AI. For that, we have scholarships, both at PhD level and at master's level. But we're also looking at children and teenagers, and we have boot camps and summer camps with the university, with AMCAS. This year we opened one in Gozo, and within a week it was fully subscribed. And we are also looking at a just transition. So we're working with Jobs Plus, for example, to have courses, basic courses for AI for people who will be affected in their work. So at the end of the day, I see that those people who have a grasp in AI probably will do better. It doesn't mean that you will lose your job because of AI, but probably those people who have good abilities and have basic competencies, at least with AI, whatever your role is, be it in marketing, if you're developing a marketing campaign.
They can use the tools better.
It's about
That's
having the tools, exactly. It's about having the tools. A lot of tools are free today. I speak with my friends sometimes, some of them are professionals and they never used AI applications. And today, you know, we speak about ChatGPT, but there's so many, you know, applications which are focused on specific tasks, which can help you in basically reaching your objectives better. So what we're looking at education is something which is wide in scope. We work with partners such as eSkills Foundation, the Ministry for Education. This year, the Ministry also launched Ministry of Digital Education Strategy. But we're also looking at the non-formal education aspect and people who are already in employment, because there's something for everyone. So there's so much opportunities to learn free of charge. There are so much opportunities to get refunds if you attend courses and get qualified scheme, being other schemes which are offered by MDIA. But as we say, you know, you can take someone a donkey to the water, but you cannot make a person drink. We want to make the water more interesting to drink, and that is the point, you know.
And accessible.
Yes. I think it's a big opportunity for all. So I invite everyone, you know, who's listening to this podcast, even if you've never thought about learning something about AI, even just watch a video on your AI on your sector. You know, just test some applications. A lot of applications are free of charge, and there's no better way than learning. They're just testing systems. And if you have any queries, if you need any support, we are there to help you. And there is a number of foundations also today which are offering this type of help.
We're running a little bit out of time, so last concluding comments. Vanessa, from your perspective, how do you see the role of AI, let's say, evolving in our everyday lives, let's say in the next few years and possibly beyond that?
Okay, so as I said before, I fully believe AI is here to stay, whether people want it or not. The question is, how are we going to best make use of it to improve our quality of life? I think this should be the scope of each and every individual. As an individual, as a consumer of all these tools, how will it evolve? The technology is evolving so rapidly that I cannot really tell you what's going to come on the market within 6 months. I'm unsure. Research is...
But it's definitely going to be interesting.
It's definitely going to be exciting. It is going to be innovative. It seems that generative AI is the next key trend, but we're looking at edge computing to be able to facilitate more these kind of real-time video processing, you know, image processing or computer vision processing, natural language processing. So these things seem to be, you know, going up within the emerging trends. But as I said, I think what's very, very important is that whatever technology comes out, whatever AI is going to offer to us, these big companies, you know, and the AI that they are going to be working with. I think that as individuals, as consumers now of this, we need to ensure that we try and be as equipped as possible, you know, within ourselves to make the best possible use of it.
Gavril, last comment from you. Where, let's say, what would you be your top priorities for the next few months or year, or again, even beyond that, from a regulator point of view? I suppose one of that being to continue to solidify your position as one of the innovators within the space as a regulator. But
so from a new AI Act perspective and implementation, we have an implementation plan, and definitely that is a priority for us to have everything in place. But from a strategy perspective, and that also has regulatory impact, our priority is AI for well-being, AI for societal well-being, AI for the personal well-being. From an economic perspective, we have some exciting times too. We're building the strongest computer in Malta, a high-performance computer, which will be available for companies and for academics. We have some very interesting schemes which are going to be launched in the next couple of months to support companies and to support individuals. And at the end of the day, when we look at all these initiatives, they're all centered on improving the quality of life. So I think that's our priority, and I think that we can do this only and succeed only if we work together.
Very good. Guys, thank you very much for being with me. This was very, very interesting. I'm sure everyone listening has also found it very interesting. Thank you everyone for joining, and we look forward to seeing you again on another edition of Kyte Talks.